Okay, everyone. It's very interesting to be here, and I'm definitely somebody who believes education is what makes the world go round, really, and keeps us from barbarism. So it's really good to be part of this. Of course, my role has been around digital identity, and digital identity is fundamental to many of the things that we are evolving towards in all aspects of our lives, including education. The whole point here is to be able to recognize people and be able to give them access to the resources that they should have access to, and allow them to do things with some degree of certainty, even though they may not be there in physically, or we can't examine documents and things like that. And so we've been working for a number of years to evolve identity so that it's ready for that. And really, one of the things that we achieved as an industry in the last 5 years is to put in place the framework that made a lot of the current digital transformation possible. In other words, without the identity underpinning, most of the things that people have been doing couldn't have been done. On the other hand, the digital transformation, which is probably one of the most important economic phenomena of the last few years, brought about with it, and is bringing about with it, a number of issues, number of problems. In fact, I would put it this way, that the digital transformation is creating 4 technical tsunamis. And I'd sort of like to talk about this and in the hope that they could be factored into your thinking about where we go with education as it becomes more digital. The first of these is what I call the Tsunami of Scale. You know, in the early days of digital transformation, people could do more or less whatever they wanted and get away with it because they were the only game in town in terms of transforming themselves. But we're now at a stage where so many entities have transformed themselves into digital first entities, or at least digital parity entities, that it's impossible to function without interacting with all of those other entities, and without taking into account what their digital transformations are doing to you. So it's no longer a question of what is my digital transformation, it has to be what is our digital transformation. How will I be impacted by the digital transformation of others? How do I impact that of others? One of the issues is that inside an enterprise, where one might have dealt with just a small number of other actors, a totally transformed enterprise is wide open. And so the traditional technologies that we had for dealing with identity are no longer adequate. The domain-based identity, you know, of the Active Directories and things like that are just a thing of the past. And the new, the sort of federation identity technologies, even sophisticated ones like Shibboleth, simply cannot scale to handle these problems of interacting with an entire world that has gone digital. So we need to be aware of the fact that we're going to be hurtling against these limits, these limitations in existing technologies. People in the identity industry are well aware of this, and we've been working to try and prepare for how we can take people to the next stage, and that's really what I'm hoping to talk about. Traditional identity systems based on domain and federation are over. The second tsunami is the tsunami of usability. Like, when we transform as an enterprise, we basically force the people who interact with us to do a digital transformation of their own. Suddenly, where they used to have just a couple of entities they interact with, they have hundreds, maybe thousands. Instead of just interacting for a few minutes, it may be for hours. Intensity has changed. The scale of things, they may interact in different locations using different devices and everything else. So the usability problems for the individual have increased in the sense as each individual entity's systems become more advanced and more capable, the individual who has to deal with not one that a given enterprise is working on, but rather the entire mass of interactions that that the person has to handle, finds a lot of these advances in things complicated and difficult to fathom. And a good example of that is that currently people need hundreds, maybe more, different username and password combinations in order to get into all of these different things. And they have different accounts in different places, and none of those accounts connect up or allow them to do anything with any other account. The next tsunami is the tsunami of privacy. It would be nice if we could just say, okay, each individual can have an identity, and all of the different entities they interact with can use that identity. But the problem is then that identity becomes a super cookie, a way of being traced and tracked and so on. And the evolution of the consciousness of the problems of privacy and profiling and so on, and the emergence of regulations such as the GDPR in Europe, but which has impacted all of us worldwide in a positive way, are that a single identity is just not feasible because it becomes a tracking cookie. So whatever we do in our digital transformation, the rise of the importance of privacy and the potential liabilities of privacy errors has to be taken into account. And the last thing is the tsunami of security. When organizations become progressively more open, they also become vulnerable in the sense that every aperture is something which can be attacked, and the number of parties lined up to do so is increasing every day. And so you have everything from just your little private hacker to organized crime to national states who are intent on being able to use systems and abuse systems and create chaos in systems as part of their national strategies now. So my point here is that digital transformation requires us to rethink our identity systems to take advantage of these transformations. And I'm going to share my screen because I'm going to get a little more concrete here. So I'm going to go past these. I've painted a gloomy picture with all of these tsunamis that are converging on us. There is, however, a simplifying concept which we can use in order to as part of our transformation. And that is moving towards proofs rather than using identities and accounts. So what do I mean by a proof? Well, you know, maybe the ability to prove your name and birth information, to prove what your home address is, to prove what your bank account is, to prove your nationality, to prove your educational achievements, to prove your vaccinations and immunities, to prove that you work for an employer or that you study at a given institutions. So what do I mean by prove? Well, as technologists, we use the concept of a verifiable credential. So that's a statement signed by an issuer. I mean, a government, an enterprise, an educational institution, that allows the recipient to determine if the credential is a forgery. So it's not simply a piece of paper that says, for example, that I have a physics degree or whatever. It's a statement that says, I have a physics degree from this university, and it can, and you can validate just by putting this thing through a program of sorts, that is not a forged credential. It's a true credential saying that Kim Cameron has these degrees. So, and this whole idea of verifiable credentials is a really big breakthrough within the identity industry, and it's now approved as a W3C recommendation, World Wide Web recommendation, and it's something that will be very widely adopted. So examples of how that might be used in education would be, for example, instead of giving people, students passwords and that are going to expire one day, give them a credential proving that they are studying in a particular year and granting them access to their resources. And they could use that same certificate later to get back to information pertaining to their experiences that year. And they would need no account, they would need no username, no password. They would just be able to use their credential. Or give students a credential that is the digital equivalent of a transcript or a diploma. And that credential can be presented without any difficulty to an employer or to another university or whatever it might be, and can be verified that it, once again, it's a valid credential. It's not a forgery. So the key here is that in terms of the privacy tsunami, is that this is not what we call back channel transfer of data. This is the student being able to transfer his or her own data in a way that is verifiable to whoever they choose to transfer it to. So this is a major industry trend. Support for verifiable credentials that can be used as proof and replace usernames and passwords. And the industry is also working on the creation of wallets that allow people to store and manage the credentials instead of just putting them on their disks or in their phones somewhere. The creation of services and software for issuing and interpreting the credentials so that institutions can easily become part of this new ecology. And the integration of verifiable credentials into existing identity systems. So for example, people already have lots of systems based on you know, their current credential systems, and so the suppliers are working on ways that the verifiable credential can tie into that, so that you don't have to change your whole systems just because you get rid of a username and password. You just say a verifiable credential can get you into the system instead of username, password, and you now are on your way towards the new era. So I'm going to wrap this up with a call to action if you want. I hope you don't mind somebody who is exterior to the education world offering a call to action, but it's offered in the most friendly way because of the need and the synergy that will be gained if the world of education ties into the industry trend. So the first thing is to ensure that your digital transformation strategy is able to withstand the 4 tsunamis. The second is begin to explore verifiable credentials, this W3C standard, as an alternative to all of our inadequate legacy alternatives, which you're gonna bump up to against the edges of those more and more as time goes on. And that educational innovators work together to decide what credentials will be in the world of education. What will they look like? What is the definition? And finally, put together entities like Shibboleth, a lot of you might know Shibboleth, that would help recipients to decide which issuers of credentials are legitimate and which ones aren't. Thanks very much.
Okay, I'm not sure if people can hear me. Oh, there I am. I'm on the screen again. Thank you for that, Kim. That was a terrific talk. I want to thank you personally because I've heard of digital identity, but I've never heard of proofs and digital proofs. And so this is it's kind of a new idea, and my brain is now processing. We do have some questions from the audience. So the first question is, are you referring to something like a hardware wallet?
Not necessarily, no. I mean, the ideal, it doesn't, we are now at a stage where there are places in your phone that are inaccessible to the phone operators. And so you don't actually necessarily have to have an alternative device. But this technology is conceived so that you can do whatever you like. You can have a wallet in a separate device. You can have a wallet running in a protected part of your phone. You can have a wallet running in the cloud if you want to outsource that to some entity that for some reason you might trust. So you can you have it's up to the individual, as they say.
Okay, so really quickly, somebody asks, it sounds like blockchain. Is the answer yes or no to that?
Well, blockchain isn't ideal for identity because those things, you can't put PII in blockchains unless the blockchain is closed off. Okay. But blockchain is very helpful for organizing your wallets so they communicate with each other. So you'll find a number of the vendors are using blockchain, but they're using it to manage your wallets so that they can communicate, not for storing your personal information.
Okay, and then the last question, if you can answer this really quick, and we'll try to stay close to time here. What do you think can incentivize participation in this new ecosystem? If there's not a quick answer, we can punt on it as well.
Well, I think the fear of failure, the fear of, you know, I've proven over the years to be extremely accurate in my predictions of what the tsunamis are.
Okay.
So that's one of the things that incentivizes you. And another is the impact of the GDPR. A lot of the previous business models are no longer feasible, actually. And people haven't yet fully discovered what the implications of that are, but they will. So the question is, how can we share data, but under the control of the user, put the user in the middle? And so people who adopt that earlier rather than later, will save a lot of money, for one thing, because they'll build their transformed systems on the basis of what's coming, rather than building them on the basis of what's gone and what will have to be retrofitted and will cost 10 times more to retrofit than to build it right in the first place.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed that presentation. We will continue on the agenda today.